Marie Magdalene Dietrich was born on December 27, 1901 at 9:15 p.m. in a third-floor apartment at Leberstrasse 65 in Schönberg, Berlin, in the last winter of the old German Empire, while snow fell so thick that the gas lamps looked like dying stars. Her mother, Wilhelmine Elisabeth Josephine Felsing, 33 years old, rigid, beautiful, and descended from a long line of Prussian clockmakers, gave birth standing up because she refused to lie down for anyone, even nature. Her father, Louis Erich Otto Dietrich, a lieutenant in the Royal Prussian Police who wore his uniform even at the dinner table, was not present. He was drilling recruits and arrived the next day with a bouquet of forced hothouse roses and the announcement that the child would be called Marie Magdalene because it sounded biblical and respectable. From the first hour the baby refused the name. She screamed whenever anyone said, Magdalene, but quieted when the maid whispered, Marlene. The nickname stuck like a prophecy. She grew up in a world of perfect order and secret violence. The apartment smelled of beeswax, starch, and the gun oil her father cleaned his revolver with every Sunday. There were no hugs, only handshakes. No fairy tales, only recitations of Schiller. At 4 she could already stand at attention for an hour without moving. At 5 she spoke French with her mother and English with the governess. Her older sister Elizabeth, called Liesel, was quiet and obedient. Marlene was the one who climbed the linden tree in the courtyard until the branches broke, who stole cigarettes from her father's desk and smoked them behind the coal cellar, who looked straight into the eyes of adults and lied without blinking. When her father died of blood poisoning in 1907, he cut himself shaving and refused to see a doctor because officers did not get infections. 6-year-old Marlene stood beside the coffin in a black velvet dress and felt nothing except the thrill of knowing the house now belonged to women. In 1914 her mother married Eduard von Losch, a handsome aristocrat and colonel in the 1st Guards Grenadiers, the only man Josephine ever loved. He kissed Marlene on the forehead and called her Mein kleiner Soldat. A year later he was killed near Verdun. His body was never found. Josephine wore black for the rest of her life and taught her daughters that love was a luxury one paid for with pain. Marlene learned the lesson so well she never unlearned it. Weimar Berlin swallowed her at 18. She studied violin at the Hochschule für Musik until tendinitis ended her concert career, then talked her way into Max Reinhardt's acting school with nothing but nerve and a forged letter of recommendation. She learned to walk across a stage as if she owned the world, to lower her voice an octave, to look at a man as if she were undressing his soul instead of his body. She took the name Marlene Dietrich because it sounded like a promise whispered in the dark. Between 1922 and 1929 she appeared in 17 silent films and a dozen plays, always in small roles, a maid, a prostitute, a society girl, always remembered. She married Rudolf Sieber, a quiet Czech assistant director, on May 17, 1923 in a civil ceremony that lasted 7 minutes. Their daughter Maria was born on December 13, 1924. Marlene kissed the baby once, handed her to a nanny, and went back to work. She loved Maria the only way she knew how, by sending money and postcards from wherever desire had taken her that week. Joseph von Sternberg saw her in 1929 singing in the revue Zwei Krawatten at the Nelson Theater. She wore a man's tailcoat, a top hat tilted over one eye, and sang Du bist der Mann für Michigan, with a voice that sounded like smoke and honey. Sternberg said later, "She was a blank page on which I could write anything." He cast her as Lola Lola in The Blue Angel, dressed her in silk stockings and a top hat, taught her to lean against a piano as if the world were ending between her thighs. The film premiered on April 1, 1930 and made her immortal overnight. Germany hated her for betraying them to Hollywood. Hollywood adored her for bringing European decadence in a German accent. Paramount signed her for 6 films at $1,750 a week, more money than she had ever imagined, and put her on a train to America with a single suitcase and a caged canary. She arrived in Los Angeles on April 1, 1930 wearing a beret and a smile that dared the world to disappoint her. Sternberg filmed her like a sculpture. Morocco, 1930, in a man's tuxedo, singing Quand l'amour meurt, while women in the audience fainted. Dishonored, 1931, as a spy who goes to the firing squad in silk stockings. Shanghai Express, 1932, as Shanghai Lily, It Took More Than One Man to Change My Name. Blonde Venus, 1932, emerging from a gorilla suit to sing Hot Voodoo, in a blonde afro wig. The Scarlet Empress, 1934, as Catherine the Great riding a white horse up a staircase made of men's bodies. She learned to control light the way other women controlled husbands. She demanded nets over the lenses, butterfly lighting, a permanent veil of cigarette smoke. She never smiled unless the camera demanded it. She became the highest-paid woman in America, bought a mansion in Beverly Hills, filled it with Biedermeier furniture and lovers of both sexes. She seduced Gary Cooper on the set of Morocco. He called her the most exciting woman I ever met. John Gilbert on Desire, Dolores Del Rio in Real Life, Eric Maria Remarque in Paris. He wrote Arch of Triumph for her. Jean Gabin in 1941 when he arrived in Hollywood as a refugee. They spoke French, made love in 3 languages, and never married because both knew marriage was for people who believed in endings. She kept her husband Rudy on a salary, sent money to Maria's boarding schools, and wrote letters that began "Liebling" and ended "Burn this." In 1933 she returned to Germany at Goebbels' personal request. He offered her 1,000,000 marks to make films for UFA. She met him in the Adlon, listened to his promises, and told him she would rather clean toilets in Hollywood than act for the Reich. She became an American citizen in 1939, the first German star to do so publicly. When war broke out, she sold her jewelry for war bonds, recorded anti-Nazi broadcasts in German, and in 1944 joined the USO. She spent 3 years in uniform, olive drab skirt, combat boots, helmet pushed back like a beret, singing Lily Marlene to soldiers in Italy, France, Germany, sometimes only meters from the front lines. She crossed the Rhine with the 6th Army Group, liberated Bergen-Belsen with the first reporters, and vomited for days. She found her sister Elizabeth running a canteen for SS officers near the camp. She never spoke to her again. After the war she kept working, but the magic was different. Desire, 1936, with Gary Cooper again, Destry Rides Again, 1939, in cowboy boots, 7 Sinners, 1940, with John Wayne, The Flame of New Orleans, 1941, Pittsburgh, 1942. She made a foreign affair for Billy Wilder in 1948 singing Black Market among the ruins of Berlin, then Witness for the Prosecution, 1957, Touch of Evil, 1958, Judgment at Nuremberg, 1961. Playing the widow of a German general with such icy dignity that the courtroom scenes still silence audiences. She recorded albums, her voice deeper, slower, more broken, toured the world in one-woman shows wearing a swan's down coat that weighed 20 kilos and cost more than a house. Age came like an enemy she refused to recognize. She broke her leg in 1973 in Sydney, performed anyway, fainting between songs. She drank a bottle of vodka a day, took morphine for the pain, lived in a darkening apartment on Avenue Montaigne in Paris surrounded by photographs of dead lovers. She stopped eating, stopped walking, stopped seeing almost everyone. Maria came every day, read to her, fought with her, loved her the way only a daughter who has been abandoned and adored at the same time can love. On May 6, 1992, Marlene refused breakfast, lay down on her bed fully dressed in a silk nightgown, and died at 6:15 p.m. at the age of 90. The official cause was kidney failure. The real cause was that she had simply decided the performance was over. She was buried on May 16 in Berlin at the Städtischer Friedhof 3 in Friedenau, wrapped in a French flag because France had been kinder to her than Germany ever was. The funeral was small. Maria forbade cameras. The gravestone is simple, Marlene, and beneath it, Hier ste ich in den Marken meiner Tage. Here I stand at the markers of my days. She left 7 unforgettable films with Sternberg, 60 more of varying brilliance, a voice that could break your heart in 4 languages, lovers who never recovered, a daughter who forgave everything except absence, and the eternal image of a woman in a man's tuxedo leaning against a piano as if the world belonged to her and always would.